Safety is essential to one's overall sense of well-being. A child expects to be kept safe. That safety informs them, that sense of safety informs them about how a child will grow and navigate her way through the world. As a child, my world was not safe. While living in the South Bronx had its shares of external geographical hazards, most of my daily hazards were within my own immediate family. When I was young, about 4 or 5 years old, my mom told me that on the day I was born, my half-sister, Deborah, took one look at me and commented, "Well, there goes my birthright." I'm not quite sure, though, what the monetary inheritance she might have been thinking about expecting, given our abject poverty that we were living in. But for her, maybe the birthright meant my mom's full attention. My mom knew that Deborah beat me. She would often encourage me to not pay her any mind or just go to your room when she gets that way. And I tried to follow my mom's advice, but it never seemed to work. The beatings just would keep happening. Well, one day, I heard my mom come in, and I showed her the bruises that Deborah had made on me that day, and they were worse than usual. My mom knew that she had to talk to Deborah. At first, I heard nothing in the room next door. Then I heard, "Deborah, she's your sister." "She's not my sister. She's a brat. You had her," bellowed Deborah in a thunderous voice. And then I slipped out of the chair that my mom told me to stay in. I went down the hall, only to hear my sister say, "You're never here." And then I heard a chair slam across the floor. "Come on, Deborah, be reasonable," my mom said. Then Deborah said something referencing her own biological father, to which my mom replied, "That's not fair." And then Deborah's voice said, "You prefer that fucking brat. Watch your language when you speak to me." And before I knew it, I heard a table being pushed, and I raced to the room only to see Deborah pick up a bicycle stand, swack my mother on the head. I ran to my room scared and huddled there in the corner until a few moments later I heard Deborah leave the room. I slowly made my way to where my mother was sitting in a chair with her hand on her bloodied head. And in that moment, my expectations about my mother's ability to protect me were shattered. My once source of protection, my Trojan, was not as strong as I had thought. My mom's eyes were hollowed in her realization that after leaving her abusive husband, all her efforts to provide me with a safe home were for naught. She was not successful in keeping her goal to her baby girl of keeping her safe. Years later, as I stood in our twin daughters' rooms holding them, I hugged them tighter that day as the discord, the bitterness, and the arguing continued in the other room as my husband's mom was yelling at him, protesting to his request for her to respect me as the mom of his children. I did not want that kind of energy in the nucleus of our family. I decided in that moment to choose joy. Yeah, joy was my Jesus, oh yes moment, when I decided that I would shield my daughters from the yelling, the discord, and the fighting. I did great when they were young, but as they entered school, I felt the pressure to ensure that they didn't just survive, but thrive in their endeavors. And my aha moment in the years to follow came in 3 waves. The first was when one of my daughters stopped coming to our bedroom for morning cuddle time before school, and my heart ached. The second wave was in a heated argument over a math problem. I slammed my fist on the table. My outburst scared me, and I thought I'd become Deborah. And the third wave came when that same daughter conveyed to me she no longer wanted to live, and my heart burst open. My fear slapped me. For me, academics and athletics were my way of surviving my childhood pain. Academically, I wanted our daughters to thrive, but my desire for their thriving came from a place of fear and not unconditional love and faith in who they were and are inside. I wasn't seeing them, and I knew that had to change. So I took a pause to pinpoint my pain, acknowledge my real feelings, understand my past impact, say I'm sorry, and engage fully in the change process. It was a 3-year journey that yielded a transformation in my relationship with our daughters. And the principles I learned on that journey are what I've been sharing with moms and daughters ever since as a mother-daughter relationship personal trainer.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. I'm really excited to dive into this conversation because there was a few things that you said, starting your story and conversation off around experiencing abuse from your sister, but how that kind of transitioned into your own motherhood journey as an adult. And sometimes we experience things and we don't know that they're actually affecting us. So kind of going back a little bit, what was that? Like, I always say hindsight is 20/20. What did you actually learn? What was that? What were the lessons in the healing that you had to do as a mother?
Well, when I found out we were having daughters, I was scared shitless. I can say that.
All things here.
I was scared shitless because I just did not want to repeat the critical nature that my mom had with me, even in her desire to protect me. It was always out of you have to just be on point. And actually it's really odd that when I have interacted with my daughters around just say the English language, and you've corrected their grammar and whatnot. And it's almost like I have a split brain where I know that even though my sister beat me, she was the one who was always on me about speaking correct English. And so for me, when we were having daughters, well, we have daughters, but when we were found out that we were having daughters, I, one, did not want to repeat the criticism, but I, two, always felt like, well, I'm the calm one. So that when I'm a former math teacher, so when they weren't doing math the way I'd expected, in that moment, I literally, for like a few days, just couldn't believe. I started feeling like, am I repeating this quote unquote abuse cycle? And just being so pressuring on them to do the process correctly, just a stupid freaking math problem. and I went through a period where I felt a lot of shame because my sister and I didn't get along for obvious reasons. And I wanted to have our daughters not experience any remnant of that and understand what a loving sisterly relationship would look like, at least in my eyes. They right now, fast forward 20 years later, they have a wonderful relationship with each other. They're twins. So, they have that twin thing going, but they also, as young adults, are encouraging to one another and call each other just to check on things like that. So that warms my heart. But for me, I remember it was like 2 or 3 weeks where after banging that table, I just said, whoa, I need to stop. And then when the one daughter came to me and said she didn't want to live anymore, that I was like, oh, shoot. Here I am as a psychologist taking care of everybody else's kids at the collegiate level. And I'd always said to myself, I don't ever want to take care of everybody else's kids and neglect my own in whatever. And so that was like the smack in the face. It's like, yo, get it together.
Every time it's interesting because I find like the concept of control is so sneaky. Because people perceive control as like dictatorship.
Right.
And then yet when you're aware of that, you're like, okay, I have overcome. I'm not yelling. I'm not doing that. But now there's this form of control in academia, or there's this form of control in, hey, like we got to do the homework. We got to do it, like the perfectionism. And then there's also this, like, I'm curious your opinion and really on the relationship of like, you are you, right? You can have all of this wisdom, but you also have your own spiritual path, your own healing path. And then your children have their own too. So it's interesting. Like I've had that as a former social worker and then like literally going through stuff in my parenting, but realizing as my children are getting older, especially my oldest coming an adult, it's like, I actually don't have control over your mental health. I don't have control over your spiritual journey. I can guide you and I can watch you and make sure that you get the support that you need. But ultimately, I can't do the work for you.
Right.
So
Right.
I'm curious what that's been like.
Yeah, in our home, we've always wanted our daughters to be able to think for themselves. And I've been really big on, you know, and just know why you believe what you believe. I don't care what it is. Just do your own research in terms of, being able to voice your position and beliefs. Um, and and it has been a humbling experience because they've chosen to express that in different ways that probably are not in the timing and or fashion in which I would have thought. But what's been neat to see is how what my husband and I have lived is what they've caught. So it's not so much the things that we've said, because then when they go out amongst their peers and then they see, it almost like resonates with them. It's like, okay, well, this is how I roll. And I constantly, especially since they've gone off to college, I'm like, hey, do you? Because I didn't have the opportunity to do me in my, I'm plus 30.
Yep.
I'm a perpetual 30-year-old. Um, you know, it's been like at least 20 years of me just getting comfortable in my own skin. And the last 2 years, kind of owning it more, like embracing, hey, okay, this is what my background was in all the abuse and whatnot. What can I now glean from it that is still me, like core me? Mm-hmm. And in the core, and this is hot off the presses. It's like in the last 3 weeks ago, I realized, in my core, regardless of what was going on, I'm a kind person.
Yeah.
And then just to own that, it's like, that's just the way I am. And and it's been neat hearing my daughter's comment to me, because we have our family chats every week. And, I'm like, yeah, today I'm prioritizing myself. And they say, how's your yoga going? And I'm just like, it's going really well. So, yeah.
I like how you just made a comment about it's actually how we live our lives. It's not about what we say. Mm-hmm. And hopefully people get that eventually, but I see that all the time where people say, I just want to help other people. I just want to help other people. And, how do I help other people? And I'm like, well, you actually haven't solved the problem yet for you that you're actually wanting to help people with. Mm. And that's not living in a place of integrity. And when we look online or anywhere else, it's like, all this get rich quick crap, how to solve all your parenting problems in a weekend with 3 secrets. And I just, in my bones, I can't do it. I can't do it when people are like, I want to help people do this. And I'm like, awesome. How did you get those results? And they're like, I haven't yet. And I'm like, it's this perpetual like rescuer mentality.
Yes.
I am going to tell somebody else how to control their life, how to live their life, but I'm not going to do the work. And I believe that when you don't do the work, your children are like they just call you out on it. They call you out on it through their behavior. They call you out on it verbally, and they're like, oh, you tell me this and you do that. Why should I respect your communication? So when it comes to like the deep inner work of how do you break the cycle of abuse, that's trauma.
Yes.
Like there's generations of trauma. There's literally your brain, it needs to heal. It's not just about, step by step on how to parent, because you see these behaviors and it's being mirrored back to you. So when you look at your children and you're like, I don't want this for them, how do I become that? What advice do you have for people when they're like, I don't even know where to start?
Actually, not to quote, I'm going to quote Michael Jackson, man in the mirror. I'm just big on moms just taking a pause. Anyone who hangs around me knows I'm all about, you need to pause to consider what your behavior is first. And the only way you can do that is to really just look in the mirror. And I went through a season of this where I would look in the mirror and just watch what my pattern was, which was I'd immediately start looking at what I considered to be an imperfection. And then it would be, okay, well, what is it that's making me or look at that way? And as I started working backwards in terms of, okay, well, because so-and-so said this to me or this happened to me, then it was sort of like, well, how do I feel in that moment? And literally, I believe that folks have a hard time, even though our bodies are wired for, harmony and balance. I use that in big quotations. Um, there's something to be said for being able to sit with the pain. And that's something that's just, it's so freaking hard to do.
Yeah.
The pain doesn't have to be a big, gigantic pain. I'm talking about the small ones, because the small ones are the ones that build up to whatever it is you end up harping on your kid about. Yeah. So, yeah.
Let's talk about sitting with the pain. So that is essentially what emotionally uncomfortable is all about. And why I transitioned from mom is in control to emotionally uncomfortable, because we hear it all the time, but it's changing this conversation around pushing through, right?
Yeah,
push, grind. And I hear this all the time from my clients when they say, oh, this is happening. And there's this judgment on it. And I'm like, why are you judging your anger? Why are you judging your frustration and overwhelm? It's there to get your attention,
right?
But it's not there to be dismissed. So let's talk about like feeling it, sitting with it. Mm-hmm. What does that mean? How long is it there for? Does it come back again?
Sitting with the pain. Everyone's pain, everyone, how do I put that? Everyone has pain, flat up. We just compensate and overcompensate for it in different ways. And the way in which, to answer your question, how do you sit in it? You just have to be still. And stillness doesn't mean, you have to go into a full-fledged meditative state. No, it's basically to pause and acknowledge that is what's happening on the inside. And I think the fastest way, at least for women and moms in particular, is to note what's going on in your body physically, because that's like a thermometer for what's going on. But societally, as you were alluding to, saying there's this whole push, we got to keep going. But even if you just acknowledge, the greatest honor you could do for yourself is to acknowledge what's going on in your body, because you only have one. You got to treat it, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't, then everything else will follow. So I think part of the process of sitting in the pain is really just to pause and acknowledge. If you can just start there, like, before, we got together today, I had on my smartwatch, and the smartwatch said, your heart rate is at 120 beats per minute in the last 10 minutes that you've been sitting. And I looked at it and I literally was like, shut the fuck up. and then I did my deep breathing, right?
Yeah.
And then 10 minutes later, I'm sitting down and it beeped again. I literally took my watch off and thought, okay, let me just acknowledge my heart is beating quickly. Yeah. Why is that? Because I want to be here with Heather, just be present, fully hers, and whatever it is that we can have together today. So it's just little things like that. I felt honored myself in the moment, and is enabling me to just be present, which is actually being present for your kids is the biggest present you can actually give them. So I firmly believe that. So honoring yourself by at least acknowledging what's going on in your body is how you start the process of sitting in the pain. It's not a one-time thing.
Yeah. And I want to I want to go back to, your story, especially with your sister. But like what I love about this and the mother-daughter connection, I'm raising 3 boys, and I feel like the mother-son connection is very different than the mother-daughter connection. Yes. but I know what my connection is like with my mother.
Yes.
And it's just always interesting, like the cyclical nature of parenting and all of that. But I want to know, like, your deepest why, because I'm always curious why somebody is so determined to break generational patterns of abuse, and why another person and I don't want to say falls victim to it, but just can't see a way out or choose to be like, I'm going to attempt to go on this healing path. I'm going to start somewhere. So I'm curious what that is for you.
Yeah, it's interesting that you asked me about my why. I'm a work in progress in terms of this was not what I woke up one morning and said, "Hey, this is what I'm going to do." It was birthed, no pun intended, birthed out of me being bedridden for 2 different 6-month seasons after hip surgery where I couldn't do the things that I needed to do. And it was a cross point where I had one thing in mind in terms of what I thought I wanted to do. And in that moment, I heard, I mean, I know you've had spiritual experiences. So for me, my spiritual experience in that moment was, what's on your heart, Michelle, was what I heard. And when I would see moms interacting with their daughters a certain way, it was almost like I was reliving the pain that I would see in their little daughter's eyes. And I thought to myself, I've been through that, 4 years of therapy, intensive EMDR, traumatic kind of work therapy to just get over not get over, but work through some things. And I thought, how can I help more? And so that's my why is I don't ever want, my passion is for younger generations. But what I kept seeing was, especially as a psychologist, I would send the youth home and then they come back and I'm having to redo stuff. It's like, I need to help the moms.
Yeah.
So that's where this came out of. And it's only in my book came out 3 years ago. It's only in the last year and a half that I've started to really just embrace, okay, this is what I'm committing to. And I'm a loyal person. So it's like, once I commit, I'm in it. And so my heart is to, one, be encouraging to moms, to let them know that they don't have to buy into, that's what I love about you, Heather. Don't have to buy into that stupidness.
Perfectionism.
Yeah, all that perfection. Yeah, all that. I call it the motherhood mantra that's out there. That they don't have to buy into that, but that they are there as their daughter's mom for a reason.
Yeah.
Everyone's.
That's so good. They are there as their daughter's mother for a reason.
Yes. Yeah. And it's everyone's journey to understand that reason is different. And I just want them to know, if there's no one else cheering there for you, I'm here cheering you on. So, yeah.
I love that.
I'll start crying if I.
Oh,
but I really, it's really so.
I was gonna say, you don't know this about me. Me making people cry brings me so much joy. Like, ask anyone on my team, my clients, like, thanks a lot, Heather. You made me cry again. And I was like, that brings me so much joy. Only because I believe that when we give ourselves permission to cry or we're in it, it's like we're so connected to self and our soul. Because I mean, during the day, we're putting on the masks, we're putting the armor up. Mm-hmm. So, Michelle, no intention to make you cry, but
they're already like forming here. So just that you know, okay.
Oh, good. Okay. If you had to go back to your younger self and those interactions that you would have with your sister. So you go back, you see your sister in her little body and you in your little body, your little being. Mm-hmm. What would you say to your sister and what would you say to your younger self?
Oh, geez. what would I say? What I would say to my sister is, you have no idea how much I look up to you. I mean, I wanted so much, like there were things that she could do that I only aspired to, just in terms of the way she spoke, the way she just had a great vocabulary. She was smart, and it's like, yeah, you're my big sister, kind of thing. We live together. Can't you see? I'd really want to say that I am fun to be around. I'm not boring, really. I could make you laugh. But then
why do you think she picked on you?
Well, just to give you a context, my mother had 3 different relationships with different men. And so my oldest sister is 20 years older than I am. This next sister, Deborah, is 11 years older than I am. And I didn't find out until later that her father, my mother was not married to, but she was married to the others. So that is a backdrop. Why do I think she took it out on me? I think she just wasn't happy. She experienced abuse herself. And, I would not wish this on anybody. At the time, as I'm being in the little girl self right now, I didn't know that. So back then, I thought she just didn't like me. And I kept thinking something was wrong with me. And what I would tell the little me is that there's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah.
And that you're special.
And I love what you said around, one, there's nothing wrong with you, but it is that when we can go back, when I'm working with people, whether it's around parenting or anything, any area of their life, it's really about compassion and empathy. And when you can look at another adult who has hurt you, or somebody even in your everyday that just doesn't support you. Like I hear people all the time, I want to do this, but my partner doesn't support me, or everyone is just projecting their crap. Like they're literally just puking their stuff onto each other. And when we can look past that hurt that somebody's puking and visualize them, see them as like a small child, it's like, who hurt you?
Yes.
Because you were just available to her. She was like, okay, I'm not going to get in trouble. I might get in trouble, but my little sister doesn't have the strength. Like she's not going to fight back. And I guarantee you it's, she regrets that. But at the same time, we don't know what to do with our pain. We don't know what to do with our hurt. And that's why I'm such an advocate for healing, because if we are not doing that work, as you can see, when you have your own children, you're like, I didn't even know this was in me. And then you have that child, and the child literally is like mirroring all of your wounds to you. And you're like, damn, it's healing it's personal growth on steroids. If you don't heal it, you're just filling that next person up with your shit. And then it just keeps going and going and going and going.
Yep. And that going and going and going pains me to no end, because I firmly believe that within us, we have the capacity to make a choice in that moment. Because when I look back on, say, my mom being in an abusive relationship with my biological father, and she didn't know she was pregnant with me. She left with my Deborah in hand and a suitcase, not knowing where she was going. To make that choice, God, if there's any single mom out there who's in an abusive relationship, please know that there are resources that you can access where you can be safe. But to make the choice to leave and get safe, when I think about how my mom made that decision, it's not goosebumps. I feel like weak right now, just in the magnitude of the kind of love, drive, just whatever it was that drove courage.
Yeah.
That, thank you. That was the word I was looking for, to do that. And so that's why I believe those cycles don't have to continue that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And yes. Oh man. The things we could talk about.
Yes.
What do you think what are you really proud of that you've accomplished as a mother?
Oh gosh, my marriage to my husband.
Wow.
That's because literally when I call him my BFF hubby, his name's Scott. But when I met him, I had prior to meeting him, I had already come to a place was like, fuck man, I'm done. Mm-hmm. This is just, y'all are just scum. Mm-hmm. And when he and I got together, because that's a whole nother story for you, but when he and I got together, it was like my one commitment was, this was something I didn't have growing up. And so this man loves me. I mean, he loves me sacrificially, supports everything that I'm about doing, being. He heard me when I would tell him about the painful past that I had. Mm-hmm. And when I look at him, I see in all his imperfections, I see his heart intent, which he daily walks out. And for us, we know that union is a foundation. And I want to say, especially in the Black community, to have a husband and wife together, loving on each other daily. And our girls know the difference. It's not something that we've ever said, as I mentioned earlier. It's just what we live to each other, and they've grown up in that. And when I see his fatherhood to them, it just makes me like, whoa, thank you, Jesus. Just like,
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, relationships are hard.
Yeah.
Relationships are a lot of intentional effort.
Yes.
And a lot of emotionally uncomfortable conversations, moments, to know when to stay, to know when to go, to know when to push, to know when to pull back.
Yep.
I love that.
Yeah. And so it's going on 30 years this year. So I'm totally stoked.
I love it.
Yeah.
So Michelle, your book is called What Mothers Never Tell Their Daughters.
Yep.
And who is your book for? What else do you have coming up? Where can we get more of you?
My book, well, first off, I believe that all mothers are daughters first. So this book is applicable.
Ooh, say that again.
All mothers are daughters first. And so the book is for anyone who is a mother, an adult daughter who's over the age of 18, preferably. A mature 16-year-old can read it, but over the age of 18. And it's intended to give moms the beginning part of the tools of being able to pause and reflect. And the book cover has, if you're listening to this audibly, the book cover has a picture of a woman looking in a mirror.
Ooh,
with a picture of her little girl self there also. So, and
where can people get the book?
Oh, it's available everywhere. I mean, if you go to your local bookstore, they can order it on demand. But on Amazon, it's available in all formats: audiobook, Kindle, and the like. And then the other thing that I'm really passionate about is really just helping more moms. So I have some online courses. One of them is Get Your Daughter Talking Now. If your daughter has stopped talking to you or is giving you the cold shoulder, regardless of her age, it's a three module course. And then I'm also going to be launching a mom mentoring group, because again, my heart is to be of encouragement to moms and educate them on things that they need to be aware of.
Love it. And your podcast, Mother-Daughter Connections.
Yeah, Mother-Daughter Connections.
Love it. That's a great place to start.
Yeah.
Dr. Michelle Deering, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
We could talk forever and ever, but I think, it is about just being vulnerable and letting go of this armor of perfection, the masks that we wear that, which I just always think it's shame and guilt underneath of why it's like, oh, if I open that can of worms, what's in there? But I think you're living proof that, when we just take that pause, when we do that emotionally uncomfortable work, we can change those patterns and also literally reinvent the next generation. So thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
There it is. You just listened to the Emotionally Uncomfortable podcast. If you want to take this conversation to the next level, head on over to our private Facebook group community, heatherchauvin.com/Facebook. My last name is spelled CHAUVIN. That's heatherchauvin.com/Facebook. Or you can text the word Facebook to 313-710-5199. That's 313-710-5199. It's a U.S. phone number and text message rates will apply. Also, if you are a huge fan of this show, please rate and review it on iTunes. Every review helps another woman like you take back control of how she wants to feel and become emotionally uncomfortable. I truly believe the better we feel, the more alive we become. This is how we are going to change the world. And if you've been watching me for a while, if you've been on the fence and you're curious, how can Heather help me? Head on over to heatherchauvin.com/work with me to check out my mastery and mastery business coaching programs. That's heatherchauvin.com/work with me.